All right, so ready to dive into Scrum.
Let's do it.
This project management framework claims it can help you double your work output in half the time.
Yeah,
Sounds a little impossible, right?
a bit, yeah.
Today, we'll be unpacking Jeff Sutherland's book, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, to see if he really delivers on that promise.
I think we'll find he does, at least to some extent.
You mentioned an interesting case study before we started recording about how Scrum helped save a multi-million-dollar project that was, well, basically a disaster.
Oh yeah, the FBI Sentinel project.
That's the
It
one?
was supposed to modernize the FBI's computer systems.
Right, because those are notoriously bad.
Yeah, outdated the whole thing.
So this project was supposed to fix that.
And it was, but years in it was millions over budget. Nowhere near completion.
So a typical government project?
Kinda, yeah.
What went wrong?
Well, they were using those old waterfall methods.
Waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giant Gantt charts, rigid plans, tons of paperwork.
Ah, the good old days.
Yeah, not exactly a recipe for success in the fast-paced world of technology.
So they needed a change.
They needed a major shakeup.
So how did Scrum come into play? Did somebody at the FBI just, like, pick up Sutherland's book?
Not quite, no.
Okay.
They brought in an expert, Jeff Johnson,
Okay.
a software development expert who knew Agile and Lean methodologies.
I see.
And he realized that Scrum could be the solution because it draws inspiration from both Agile and Lean.
So Agile and Lean, what are those in a nutshell?
Think of Agile as adapting on the fly, like navigating a winding road.
Okay.
And Lean is all about streamlining, like decluttering your house, but for work processes.
So Scrum is kind of a hybrid approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's about being flexible and efficient, eliminating waste, and focusing on delivering value.
Interesting.
These principles actually have roots in the Toyota production system, which revolutionized car manufacturing.
Makes sense.
They were all about continuous improvement.
So back to the FBI, how did this Scrum experiment actually work out?
So they completely ditched the waterfall methods and embraced Scrum's iterative approach, working in short, focused cycles called sprints.
Sprints.
Yeah.
Like, how short are we talking?
Usually 2 weeks.
So what exactly happens during a sprint?
So each sprint starts with a planning session where the team decides on their goal for those 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then they have daily 15-minute stand-up meetings.
Stand up.
Yeah, literally everyone stands up, just to keep it quick.
Makes sense.
They discuss progress, address any roadblocks, make sure everyone's on track.
I like that no more working in isolation for weeks only to realize you're going in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
So what happens at the end of the sprint?
Well, at the end of the sprint, the team shows their completed work in a sprint demo.
Like a presentation.
Exactly. And then, to wrap things up, they hold a sprint retrospective.
Okay.
They analyze what went well and what could be improved for the next sprint.
So it's this constant cycle of doing, reviewing, and adapting.
Exactly. That's the inspect and adapt cycle, a core principle of Scrum.
Embrace change. Don't cling to a plan that might not be relevant anymore.
Exactly.
Makes sense, especially in a fast-paced environment like the FBI, but did it actually work? Did this approach produce any results?
Oh, the results were remarkable. The team's velocity tripled.
Velocity.
The amount of work they could complete in a sprint, literally 3 times as much work in the same amount of time.
Wow, so Scrum didn't just save the project, it actually made it a success story.
It did, yeah, and it actually sparked a culture shift within the FBI. They started using it with other teams, too.
That's incredible.
Yeah, greater collaboration, more agility across the board.
So to really get into the nitty-gritty of how Scrum works, let's talk about the core elements, the key roles.
Sure.
What makes this framework tick?
There are 3 primary roles in Scrum.
Yeah.
The product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team.
Three-legged stool, you need all of them.
Exactly.
So let's break down each role, starting with the product owner.
The product owner is essentially the captain of the ship.
Okay.
They define the vision for the product, prioritize features, and ensure the team is delivering value to the user.
Making sure everyone is rowing in the right direction.
Exactly.
And the Scrum Master.
Scrum Master is like a facilitator, a coach.
Okay.
They guide the team, remove obstacles, ensure everyone's following the Scrum process.
So they're keeping everyone on track, motivated.
Yes, ensuring smooth sailing.
I like that.
And then you have the development team, the people who actually build the product.
They need to have a variety of skills, right?
They do, yeah. It's a cross-functional team.
Makes sense. So how do these roles actually work together? What are the key principles that guide them?
Well, we talked about the expect and adapt cycle. That's fundamental.
Right. Constantly evaluate, adjust course.
And another key principle is focusing on value.
Every decision should deliver benefit to the user.
Exactly. No wasted effort.
And no unnecessary bells and whistles.
Right. That ties into another principle, eliminating waste.
So streamline the process, maximum efficiency.
Exactly.
These principles seem like they could apply to all sorts of projects, not just software.
Oh, absolutely. Sutherland actually argues that you can apply Scrum to anything, from building cars to launching rockets into space.
So it's a mindset,
It's a whole new way of working
not just building things faster, but building the right things in the right way.
and empowering teams to work together more effectively, fostering a culture of collaboration, continuous improvement.
This is really interesting, but I'm still a bit confused about how a team estimates the effort required for tasks in Scrum.
Ah, yeah.
It can't be as simple as just assigning hours, right?
No, no.
Okay.
Scrum uses relative estimation.
Okay.
It focuses on comparing the size and complexity of tasks, not specific hours.
So, like, is this task bigger than that task?
Exactly, just a general sense of the relative effort.
Okay.
One method they use is called dog sizing.
Dog sizing.
Yeah, it's not what you think.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
You basically ask, is this task the size of a Chihuahua, a Labrador, or a Great Dane?
I love that. So you're not trying to figure out the exact weight of each dog, just get a sense of their relative sizes?
Yeah, exactly. It's intuitive.
Okay, but how do you go from dog sizes to actual values for planning?
That's where the Fibonacci sequence comes in.
The Fibonacci sequence,
Yeah.
like the math concept.
That's the one.
Okay, I did not see that coming.
It's fascinating. Our brains are naturally drawn to these increments.
How so?
We're better at seeing differences between larger numbers. Like, it's easier to say if a task is a 5 or an 8 than a 5 or a 6.
Makes sense, so it's more intuitive.
Exactly. Avoids that false precision of trying to estimate things down to the minute.
So we've got our dog sizes, we've got our Fibonacci sequence, but how do you actually break down those large tasks into manageable pieces for a sprint?
Ah, that's where user stories come in.
User stories, tell me more.
Instead of just listing features, Scrum frames work in terms of user needs.
So focus on delivering value, understanding the why behind the
It's exactly.
keeping the user at the center.
Yes. A typical user story goes like this. As a type of user, I want to perform some action so that I can achieve some goal.
Okay, so it's very specific who, what, and why.
Yeah, much clearer than just saying, implement this feature.
Do you have an example from the book?
Yeah, let's say you're building a game app. A user story might be, as a user of this game app, I want to be able to access a list of my recent games played so that I can easily find and rejoin a game.
Okay, very clear, concise, driven by user needs.
Exactly.
This is incredibly insightful. I'm already thinking about how to apply some of this to my own work.
It's great.
We've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to Scrum. Like, what's the definition of done?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
And what about those Kanban boards you mentioned?
Yeah, those sound interesting.
We'll dive into all of that in part 2 of this deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
But for now, we'll take a break, and we'll be back to continue our Scrum journey soon. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about user stories and how they help teams focus on delivering value.
Right, but
But how do you actually know when a task is truly done in Scrum? Like, it can't just be a feeling, right?
no, not at all. In Scrum, there's this concept called definition of done.
Definition of done.
It's not enough to just say, it's finished.
Right.
You need a shared understanding of what done actually means, like concretely.
So it's like a checklist, but more than that.
It's about setting clear expectations and ensuring quality.
Oh, okay.
So a definition of done might include things like,
Give me some examples.
sure, like code being reviewed and tested, documentation being updated, or the product owner giving their final approval. So it eliminates ambiguity, make sure everyone is on the same page.
Or more surprises.
Exactly. No more last-minute scrambles because someone thought they were finished, but, well, they weren't really.
Right. It streamlines the process, reduces rework, and ultimately saves time and effort.
Yeah, and remember, minimizing waste is a core principle of Lean, which, as we said, heavily influences Scrum.
Right. Okay, I want to circle back. You mentioned Kanban boards earlier.
Oh, right.
Can you tell me more about those and how they fit into the Scrum process?
Kanban boards are a great visual management tool that can be really helpful for Scrum teams.
Visual, okay.
Yeah, so imagine a large board divided into columns representing different stages of a task. To do, in progress, done.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Each task is written on a card and then physically moved across the board as it progresses.
Oh, I like that.
It's very visual.
Yeah, so everyone can see what's happening at any given moment.
Exactly. It's great for transparency, keeps everyone on the same page,
Hmm.
and helps identify bottlenecks.
Bottlenecks.
Yeah, like if you see a bunch of cards piling up in one column, that means something's holding things up.
But that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so it's a visual cue that something needs to be addressed.
I can see how that would be really helpful.
It's a great way to bring Scrum to life, make it tangible.
Okay, so we've talked about the process, the tools, but what about the people?
Ah, the human element.
Exactly. Sutherland talks a lot about team culture in the book.
You're right.
What are some key elements of a high-performing Scrum team culture?
I think one of the most important is trust.
Trust.
Team members need to trust each other's skills, their judgment.
Okay.
They need to feel comfortable sharing their ideas and concerns openly.
So it's about creating a safe space for communication and collaboration.
Yeah, exactly, where everyone feels heard and respected,
Hmm.
and also having a shared commitment to the team's goals.
So no lone wolves in Scrum.
No, definitely not. Everyone needs to be working together, helping each other, celebrating successes as a team.
Right, it's about that shared purpose.
Exactly.
What about the role of leadership in all this?
It's interesting. Leadership in a Scrum environment is different from the traditional top-down style.
In what way?
Well, in Scrum, leaders act more like coaches or facilitators, guiding the team, removing impediments, not dictating every step.
So it's more about empowering the team.
Exactly. Creating an environment where they can flourish, take ownership, make decisions independently.
Sutherland actually calls this servant leadership.
Yeah, serving the needs of the team above all else.
Interesting. How does that actually play out in practice?
It's about putting the team first,
Mhm.
empowering them, removing obstacles, and fostering a positive work environment, leading by example,
Okay.
focusing on the growth and well-being of the team.
That's refreshing, honestly, especially in today's world.
It is.
Now, I want to touch on Sutherland's background for a moment.
Sure.
He was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, which is, well, pretty intense.
It is.
How did that experience shape his approach to work and ultimately lead to the creation of Scrum?
It's a fascinating story. His experience as a fighter pilot definitely influenced his approach to management.
How so?
Well, in the world of aerial combat, there's no time for bureaucracy or indecision.
Right, it's high stakes.
You need to make decisions quickly, adapt to survive.
So those same principles apply to software development.
Exactly. Agility, responsiveness, they're crucial in both worlds.
So he realized traditional management structures weren't working.
He needed something more flexible, adaptable, and responsive to change. And that's how Scrum was born.
So Scrum came out of a need for a more effective way to manage complex and rapidly changing projects.
Yeah, and its success shows that its principles are pretty universally applicable.
I think one of the most compelling things about Scrum is that it's not just about getting things done faster.
Right.
It's also about creating a more fulfilling and enjoyable work experience.
Absolutely. When teams are empowered and working well together, it can be incredibly motivating and rewarding. There's a sense of ownership, accomplishment, camaraderie.
So it's not just about efficiency, it's about creating a better work environment.
Exactly.
We've talked a lot about Scrum, but the big question is, can it really help you do twice the work in half the time?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
There are no guarantees.
Yeah.
But Sutherland presents a lot of evidence that it's possible.
The FBI case study is just one example.
Yeah, and there are many more in the book.
But ultimately, it's about applying the principles, adapting them to your context.
Embracing the Scrum mindset.
Exactly.
Every project and team is different.
But those core principles, focusing on value, eliminating waste, embracing change.
Those are universally applicable.
It's amazing how these simple ideas can have such a big impact.
It really is. And it goes beyond individual productivity.
Right.
Imagine the potential of Scrum to transform teamwork, communication, leadership across all sorts of organizations.
That's a really exciting thought. But for now, let's move into the final part of our deep dive.
Good.
We'll wrap things up with some key takeaways and leave you with some things to ponder on your own. All right, so we've really dug into Scrum. Its origins, principles, roles, techniques, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
But now I want to kind of zoom out, look at the bigger picture. What's the takeaway here for our listeners? Like, why should they care about Scrum, even if they aren't, managing a software project or anything?
That's a great question. And I think what's really fascinating about Scrum is that these principles, adaptability, continuous improvement, focusing on value, they're not limited to software at all.
Yeah.
You can apply them to your own life, daily tasks, personal projects, anything really.
So you're saying, like, I could use Scrum to plan a vacation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or Write a novel. Anything.
Really?
Yeah, break down that big goal into smaller sprints,
Hmm.
set clear objectives for each sprint, evaluate your progress, adjust as needed.
Hmm.
Work smarter, not harder, whether it's a product or your to-do list.
So no more feeling overwhelmed by those massive goals. Break it down, keep moving forward.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual productivity either.
Right, we talked about that.
Imagine the potential for Scrum to transform teamwork, communication, leadership, in all sorts of organizations, industries.
So it's a bigger idea than just project management.
It's a whole new way of thinking and working, embracing change, prioritizing value, empowering teams to achieve amazing things.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
It is.
So we've unpacked a lot, from the origins of Scrum, the roles, the principles, to those, what were they, dog sizes?
Yeah, dog sizes, can't forget those.
But before we wrap up, anything that really stood out to you from Sutherland's book?
You know, one thing that really resonated with me was his focus on the human element. It's not just about processes and tools, it's about people.
Right, creating an environment where people can thrive.
Yeah, feel ownership, pride in their work.
He talks about those transcendent teams driven by a shared purpose.
Exactly, to create something truly exceptional.
That's a powerful idea, no matter what you're working on.
It is.
So here's a question for our listeners. Could applying these Scrum principles, even in small ways, help you achieve more, collaborate better, and maybe even find greater fulfillment in your work and your life?
Something to think about, for
Yeah.
sure.
Definitely. And if you want to learn more, we highly recommend checking out Jeff Sutherland's book. It's full of great stuff.
Lots of insights, anecdotes, practical advice.
Yeah, we've only scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a taste of what Scrum is all about.
Maybe spark some ideas, or maybe you're ready to try it out.
Either way, thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep diving deep.